He is a former first-round draft pick of the Houston Rockets in the 2012 NBA draft, a former star at the University of Iowa State University, I should say, the Cyclones. Started over there, went to the NBA. Unfortunately, things didn't pan out, but he's a former MVP of the NBL in Canada. And just recently, he announced that he is making the transition over to mixed martial arts. We're talking to Royce White now on the program. I'm looking forward to this. Royce, how are you?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. Wow, this is really great. I didn't expect to ever talk to you on this show, but I really appreciate you coming on. So let's start with where this dream began for you. Why did you decide to start training in MMA?
Well, I love the sport. I love martial arts, and I'm in a unique position to be able to learn from some of the best martial arts minds in the world. And in addition to that, I have the opportunity to compete at the highest professional level. And as a bonus, there's the chance to make history too doing it. So if I didn't do it, I think it'd be a shame. And if I'm able to, climb the mountain, conquer this feat and climb that heavyweight mountain and capture that crown, I think you're going to see a lot of athletes start to, recalculate or revisit the limits that they place on their athletic ability or that they let others.
How long have you been training martial arts?
Long enough. Long enough.
Like since you were a kid?
Oh, no.
Later in life you started?
Yeah.
Who introduced you to it?
Well, my first coach was Greg Nelson. So,
Yep. Minnesota Martial Arts Academy.
Absolutely.
So that's the same team that essentially Brock Lesnar came out of.
Correct.
Have you ever trained with Brock?
No, I haven't. We both went to University of Minnesota at different times, though. So
Right.
I've heard folklore about how insane he works. So
Right.
he's an inspiration, no doubt.
So you just started training. You reached out to Greg Nelson and said, "I'd like to start training. I'm considering fighting."
Yeah,
Like, how does it
yeah.
all go down?
Yeah, no, I walked into the gym one day and I said, "Hey, man, this is what I want to do." And everybody at the gym was very, supportive and interested in the process of doing it. So,
Okay. And how was it early on? Like, was it a little harder than you thought? Did you get beat up?
no, not at all, not at all. I loved it. I just absolutely love it. Everything about it. It's the purest form of competition there is, physically.
Right.
So it's tailor made for me. I'm a competitor through and through.
I know you don't want to say, and why don't you want to say how long you've been training for? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, it's a war game now.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
There's no need to give up any information that's not necessary.
Has it been over a year?
Yeah.
Okay. And since you told the world that this is something you're considering, have you had a lot of MMA promotions reach out to you?
We're in contact with the ones that matter.
Okay. Which ones?
Yeah. Yeah. We talked to the UFC. We've spoken with Bellator. So those are the two
Yep.
two main ones, and they're in on notice. So
What kind of feedback you get from them?
I think they're excited. They're
Mhm.
excited, as I am. I'm appreciative that they're even considering giving me an opportunity. Like I said, for me to have the opportunity to step in and compete at the highest level professionally is something that makes it almost too hard to turn down.
Right. Okay, so you reached out to them. There's clearly interest. Just for those that don't know about your statistics, if you will, the tail of the tape, you would compete as a heavyweight, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. 265.
How tall
I
are
walk
you?
around 6'8".
6'8". And do you know
Mhm.
what your reach is?
I think it's 87. So
Whoa, that's insane. And
yeah.
and how much do you weigh?
Um, I walk around at like 275. So
Okay, not too bad.
I'm sorry I keep moving the camera. I can't tell if you can see me. I can see the show, but
Oh yeah, I can see you. You're looking
all
great.
right, all
Yeah,
right,
I see you
all
just
right, all
fine.
right, all right, all
Um,
right.
and have you sparred yet?
Yeah,
How's
we
that feel?
spar Man, I feel good in there. I feel natural. I feel excited most of all, and I think that's important to to make this type of a transition, and pursue a sport. You got to feel good doing it. You got to enjoy doing it. And I really enjoy it. So that's a positive.
Have you figured, there was a guy in the UFC named Stefan Struve who was like 7 foot tall, and he never
No,
quite
I remember.
he didn't quite figure out how to use his length to his full advantage. Have you figured out the advantage that you have here with your
Yeah.
size, with your length?
Yeah, me and Stefan are two different level of athletes. So
Yeah.
I mean, no disrespect to him. He did his thing and he went in there and fought, and much respect to him. But this is no CM Punk move. You know what I mean?
Oh, I feel you. Okay, I understand. So you're saying this isn't like a side, like you're taking this very seriously. You're actually trying to gun to be a champion.
Yeah, yeah. I want the heavyweight strap, and if you know anything about my narrative, you know anything about my story, it actually makes sense that this would happen for me, and that I would actually conquer that feat.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, if you just follow my story, and if you've seen the things that have gone on in my professional career as an athlete, the ebbs and flows that happen in great athletes' career. This is one of those. This is one of those flow moments that, if I'm able to do the right things, you know would just be historic. It'd be prolific.
Okay, so there might be people who don't know. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
You when you were drafted, and even before you were drafted by the Rockets, you were vocal about mental health issues, telling the world that you lived with. And correct me if I'm miscategorizing this, generalized anxiety disorder. Is that fair?
That's correct. Yeah.
And of course, things didn't pan out with the Rockets. You did get a chance with the Kings. Things didn't ultimately pan out in the NBA, at least for now. You went to the NBL. This is something that you've talked openly about, and I've heard you even say that the NBA wasn't ready to talk about mental health issues the way you wanted to talk about them, and perhaps you didn't feel like you were being protected. How are you doing now? How are you feeling now, 7 or so years later after you were drafted?
Yeah, Ariel. If I could, I'd like to take a little bit of time just to kind of explain that story a little bit in
Please.
depth with some nuance, because the details matter. You did a fine job of the overview. That's what they write on Wikipedia. I appreciate you. But so I was, like you said, I was playing my college basketball at Iowa State University, and I spoke publicly about my history with anxiety, uh, an anxiety that dated back to me being a child. I was formally diagnosed at 16, and I played well with my anxiety at Iowa State. I flew with my anxiety at Iowa State, and part of the story about my anxiety was that I have a fear of flight, fear of flying, and a fear of heights. So I was able to play through those things at Iowa State, and not only play but play exceptional. I'm one of the only players in the history of college basketball to lead my team in all five major stat categories, and I'm probably one of a handful of a hand, a select few people to do it in a Power Six conference. So all of that allowed me to still be eligible to be drafted or have prospects of being drafted, and I was drafted. And once I was drafted, I had some very preliminary conversations, you could say, with the Houston Rockets about trying to, set up an environment that was similar to the one that I had in college regarding how we dealt with my anxiety. And it was a real simple one. Let the doctors decide, let the doctors inform. And if he can fly, he flies. If it's possible for him to drive, he drives. And in those conversations, we heard some attitudes and heard some perspectives from the NBA that let us know that we needed to take a closer look at policy. For example, when I requested to drive, the Houston Rockets had to check in with the league and make sure that it would be okay for them to provide that transportation. And when they did that, they let us know that the NBA had made it clear to them that they would be subject to fines in the millions of dollars or other penalties because they would consider ground transportation, RV, for example, as a salary cap infringement. So that was such a preposterous claim by the league that we wanted to take an even closer look at the policies. And upon doing so, we uncovered that not only was there not a specific mental health policy in the NBA, but there wasn't one piece of language that specifically acknowledged mental health at all in the entire collective bargaining agreement. And so when we suggested that we implement something in writing just to actually validate that mental health is a real thing and deserve priority or policy, we were laughed out of the room by the media publicly at the time, by the league office, by the union, and anybody else who had a conversation about it in 2012. And now, 5 years later, it's almost as if everything that I said has come true, and they even quote me and the letters that I've written and the information that the doctors and I provided about why policy is important when they say that they're doing progressive things around the topic of mental health.
Right. Because other players have come out over the past year or so talking about this, DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Love, and I've seen you being quoted. Do you feel like you were blacklisted, blackballed, like you were too much trouble, and so none of the teams wanted to touch you afterwards?
Well, I think it's important to point out that you know me saying that mental health should be a priority or that it needs policy being the grounds for me to even be blackballed is just outrageous, and it's true. Which makes it more outrageous that I actually would be blackballed for saying that mental health is a priority. And so I didn't say that it was a priority just for the simple fact that all the players need better support with their mental health, or we're not getting psychiatric treatment, because obviously a player could go out and get psychiatric care. That's not what it's about. It's about whether, as an institution, a brand as big as the NBA acknowledges that mental health is a core component of overall health. And if they don't do that, then they are, egregiously on the wrong foot when it comes to their approach to overall health. And that actually happens to be the case.
Yeah, and I've even heard after some of the comments that Kyrie Irving has said recently about how the players are unhappy and whatnot. So you sit back and listen to all of this. How does it make you feel? Do you feel like, okay, where was all this talk 7 years ago when I was trying to bring it up?
Well, honestly, I feel like the NBA and its players are still echoing a lot of the same sentiments that I did 6 years ago, and there hasn't been much movement. There's been a lot of public conversation about the topic and a lot of moves to create a public stance that is current with the times. And we all know that mental health has come a long way in 7 years on the public stage. But as far as actually changing their core attitude towards the topic, it hasn't happened. They still don't have a policy to this
Hmm.
day, and that's just a fact.
I don't need you to tell this. Obviously, you know this, but a fight is a very anxious endeavor, right? I mean, there's
Hmm.
months of build up, all eyes on you. Saturday night, Las Vegas, the lights. I mean, I've talked to a million fighters who have said, I mean, some of them want to throw up right before, right? How do you
Hmm.
think you will respond to something like that?
Well, when the lights are biggest, I always am my best. Um, I've always been a person who responds under pressure, and I think that ultimately there's a huge misunderstanding about what anxiety actually is and how it manifests. Anxiety can manifest any way from you being nervous and feeling like you're about to throw up before a fight to not sleeping well or having your appetite be off. Anxiety has a lot of different manifestations. If you don't believe me, go check the DSM or any other clinical criteria for anxiety and anxiety disorders. They're dynamic, you know, issues. They're dynamic, you know, uh, syndromes. So, I played in front of 16, 17,000. I played, you know, in the NCAA tournament with everything on the line, and multiple state tournaments at the high school level. Played in the NBA arenas. That part has never bothered me. Being in front of the camera never bothers me. Having public conversations has never bothered me. So all the things that you would traditionally think would bother a person is what we need to get away from in approaching our perspectives around anxiety, because it just manifests itself in different ways. So,
And how are you doing now overall? How is your life? How are you feeling?
man, I'm as happy as I've been. I can't tell you how much I'm enjoying the martial arts process. Like I said, I have the fortune to be able to be involved with some of the best minds in the world, and something that I've loved since I was young. And now I get the chance to go out there and compete and do it and put my game together in a way that, um, actually has a shot at doing something really special. And, if you don't marvel at those type of opportunities, then I don't know what could possibly get you going.
So does this mean now that you're focusing your attention on this, does this mean that your basketball journey is officially over?
Well, I mean, my basketball journey is a lot up to the NBA and its decision makers. Um, I'm playing in the Big Three this summer, so that I look forward to. And shout out to Ice Cube for allowing me to be able to participate in that. He could have easily allowed all of the the BS that has gone around my name in the basketball world to keep him from giving me that shot. But he understands that talent exists independently of the brokerage, and that's why the Big Three is even able to exist,
Hmm.
because there just isn't enough professional basketball to service how much talent there is, especially here in America. And whether or not the NBA is an option in the future, I would assume me choosing to fight is a clear non-starter. Imagine asking my team to allow me to fight in the off season or something like that when they wouldn't even give me a bus to drive from Minnesota to Chicago.
Right. Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
So in a perfect world, when would you like to make your debut?
Um, we'll see. I mean, obviously, I have a team, a management team, and you know that's what you hire them for, is to decide those kinds of things. But probably not going to make it out of the year without seeing my first fight.
Okay, and would you like to go straight pro, or do you think you'll take amateur fights first?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's going to be a hard no or a hard yes for me, and that's the way I like it. I wouldn't want it any other way. So,
What do you mean absolutely on the pro thing, or amateur first?
pro.
You're gonna go straight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And would you like, we've seen some people, like you mentioned CM Punk, he went straight to the UFC, but we've seen some other people fight on a regional scene, if you will, and then go to one of the big shows. What do you think you'll do? What do you want to do?
We'll see. We'll see. I want to. The business isn't all about what a fighter wants anymore. Obviously, I love what the UFC and Dana are doing with the business, with the sport, and how they're growing it. And there's many things to consider when going in and deciding when you fight and all of those things. So I mean, ultimately, I want to do whatever makes sense for everybody. You know what I mean? But I've made it clear to the UFC, to my management, and publicly, that my goal is to win the heavyweight strap, and I think it's doable.
Right.
Actually, I don't think it's far fetched. So
Yeah, and you turn 28 next month, so it's not like you're, someone who's jumping in as a 40-year-old. So it seems like time is on your side. Randy Couture debuted in his mid 30s. Are you going to join, or are you going to try to bring in other fighters who are like? I mean, I can't imagine you get to train with a John Jones type of guy with that kind of length and height. Is that something that you're interested as well? Or are you happy with what you have at your disposal in
man,
Minnesota?
come on, man. If you John Jones is quite arguably the best of all time. I mean, be like playing with Michael Jordan or getting to work with Michael Jordan and training coming into a sport it's an unreal opportunity.
Hmm.
Even being able to work with Brock or I'm just excited at the opportunity to work with all of these people. And yeah, for sure I would. Now, John's still very young in his career, and he, like I have, has had some time taken away from our athletic career due to non-injury related things, you could say. And
Right.
for me, I'm turning 28, but since I was 21, I've only played in 2 full seasons. So
Right.
I'm like 23 in basketball years. I don't have 6, 7 seasons of full running wear and tear on my body. So with John, it's kind of interesting because if he ever decides to make the jump to heavyweight, we might have to lock horns. But again, I wouldn't pass on the opportunity to learn from him at all. So
How's your takedown defense?
it's coming along. It's coming along. I tell you, when I first started, I was a fish out of water. I was getting taken down all the time. It was hard to stay on my feet when somebody decided to try to take me down. But slowly but surely, I'm instinctually coming around and not letting it happen as much. The real question is, how's it going to be? When there's a real high level heavyweight wrestler in front of me. But I played point guard at 265, and I do believe in my mobility at the weight and at the weight class. And obviously there are ways to cut the octagon off, as I've been studying the game. But we're gonna try and make it very hard to do that.
Wow. Color me intrigued. This is fascinating. By the way, why is your Twitter name Highway?
Oh, Highway 30 is where Iowa State sits
Ah, okay. All right.
in
Yeah.
in Ames. Yeah.
Okay. So to recap, we're hoping you think you're feeling before the year is done, 2019, you will make your pro debut.
Yeah, absolutely. Before the year's out.
Wow. How about before the summer is over? Like, is this happening sooner than later?
Hey, I don't know. It's possible. It's
Okay.
possible for the summer's out.
And you're open. You're open for offers. Let's talk.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have a gut feeling who you'll sign with? Could you tell us that?
I mean, if I'm just, yeah, I won't say.
Oh,
I mean,
come
I
on.
made it. I made it
Say
clear
it.
that my goal is the UFC heavyweight strap. I mean, that's the goal. Now whether or not we can come to terms on what we do in the initial parts of my career, that's something for my management and them and those guys to figure out. Obviously, if all things work out, how could I say no to being a part of the UFC as an incoming professional? That's ridiculous. So
All right. Well, I wish you the best, Royce. Keep us posted. This is a fascinating story. I'm looking forward to seeing how it all plays out. Great to meet you, and thanks for coming on.
yeah, thanks for having me on, Ariel. I appreciate you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Wow, what a fascinating story that is. Royce White, the former draft pick of the Houston Rockets, now making the transition over to mixed martial arts. 6'8", 275 pounds. That is a story worth following.